I'm Ronnie, and I host this podcast with my mentor, Wendy.
Hey!
At Big Girl Money, we believe we spend way too much time at work not to have fun.
That's why we use our millennial and baby boomer perspectives to dish out intergenerational wisdom,
Career advice,
and leadership skills in a practical and humorous way.
Join us every other Wednesday for water cooler talk over wine. This is Big Girl Money. Okay, we are live.
And what a good day.
And what a good day. Except for me forgetting my computer that we usually download or that we usually record on. So then we had to download Logic onto Wendy's computer and blah, blah, blah.
But we are resilient.
It's never smooth around here.
Never. But we had the best day doing a live talk show for Comcast.
I love calling it a talk show.
I do too.
It makes me feel like maybe one day it will be a talk show.
Yeah, maybe one day we could be like Oprah. Right?
That would be amazing. Do you know what I just remembered now randomly?
What?
How Clark said that we should think about recording really far away from each other like they do an Armchair Expert.
Yes.
We got to try that sometimes, and I can sit all the way over on the couch.
It would be so weird.
Swave at each other.
I wouldn't like it.
That'd be opposite of what we did today. Today, Wendy and I, for our live podcast, even though we are accomplished, impressive women in tech with a combined 35 years of experience.
Actually, more than that.
35
plus 6. Are you 6 or what are you?
I'm 4.
So 40 years.
40 years of experience. Could not get 2 mics to work with Microsoft Teams. And so the guy that we're doing the dry run with, you can tell they're kind of like, okay, how long are they going to work on this for?
Yes.
And he finally just goes, why don't you just share a mic? And we were like, okay.
Right. We've sat in the same chair before.
Yeah.
We can share a mic.
Yep. So
we like each other that much.
Nice and close and use the one mic. And I actually kind of liked it. I kind of want to do it for every episode.
I did. I liked it too. And it was so cool today because we, of course, said we aren't going to see, it's too many people, so we couldn't see videos, video feeds and streams of folks. So we asked for engagement over the chat, and it was gifts and so much cool stuff.
The chat was popping.
And it was so much fun, and we got such good feedback. But my favorite part of it was how many people reached out after with LinkedIn and asked us to connect. And Ronnie guilted people into giving her as many LinkedIn invites as me.
Yes, I did.
So I did.
I was like, I'm so close to 500, and everybody only requests Wendy, not me. God. And then I logged in, and I had all the requests. I was like, I'm getting my way.
So we got off the event, and I went to start working. I said, are you going to just get back to working here? And she goes, no, I have to spend time with my fans. So cute.
So if you are working at a company that is looking for a fun, new, unboring, Wendy made up that word earlier today.
Unboring professional development.
Yes. Think about having Big Girl Money come on for a live podcast because it's unique. It's different. I don't know any podcasts that are hosted by a mentor-mentee duo with as much spunk as we have.
It's so true. And the intergenerational aspect of what we do is pretty engaging too.
Yes. So hit us up if that's something you're interested in.
Exactly. Because Ronnie and I are all about sharing the love and sharing the wisdom.
And we also happen to be all about being the center of attention. And so this satisfies both those needs. We can help others and be the center of attention.
That's right.
Which is all I could ever ask.
That's right. So we are putting in double duty today. Ronnie's spending like half the day with me here. We even had thoughts of what a Big Girl Money office environment might look like as we...
really getting big for our britches over here. We
are getting big for our big girl britches. Yes. But it was so much fun. And we had to tape tonight ahead of time because Ronnie is going away on vacation again.
I am.
10 days in
the Dominican Republic.
Yes.
Oh.
She is at that phase where everybody's getting married that she knows.
Yep, it's true. Going to weddings left and right. And this wedding, I was just so honored to be invited to. Thank you, Melissa, for inviting me to your wedding. And I'm so excited to go. And her good friend who's a bridesmaid in the wedding, I'm staying with her and her family, Jimena, who's on the show, and who I talk about all the time. So yeah, we're going to be vacationing for 10 days. It's going to be amazing.
How lucky are you? And I'm taking 2 days and going to Bozeman on Thursday for a quick in and out trip with my sweet daughter who's in her last semester of college at Montana State University in Bozeman.
Aww.
So, yeah.
Big stuff coming up.
I know.
So we are really excited about this episode, though, because this is the episode for anybody who's an entrepreneur or working in the startup industry or wants to work at a startup, because we are talking to a lawyer who is so experienced in navigating all things like getting funding, making an exit, all the things that you don't realize you need legal counsel for when you are a founder.
Exactly, because your success is only as powerful as your governing documents.
Whoa.
Do you like that? That could be her tagline, actually.
It's not very sexy, though.
It isn't.
Your governing documents.
I've spent too much time with HOAs lately.
Wendy, some big news. Big Girl Money is finally in a committed long-term relationship with her soulmate.
Are you talking about our newest sponsor, Trove?
Yes, obviously. Because Big Girl Money and Trove are a match made in heaven, and I'm so excited to be partnered with them.
Me too. Trove was actually founded by two best friends and travel companions, Emily and Erica, who were inspired by their travels to over 17 countries.
Just like we will be when we go on world tour one day.
Exactly.
Each quarter, Trove helps people fall in love with a new city by curating the perfect box with locally sourced goods and products that ship straight to your doorstep. And then you get to use all the amazing goodies you just received in your box during a virtual cooking class featuring an authentic female chef straight from the city you're exploring.
And the box also includes another cultural experience such as a wine tasting or a tour of an elephant sanctuary or a coffee pour over. Well, I could go on and on. And you feel good while you're doing it because Trove gives back 20% of all their profits to small business.
Their next stop is Mexico City for a special celebration of Dia de los Muertos, or Day of the Dead. This box will feature a live cooking class making mole rojo, red mole, and corn tortillas. We'll also learn how to paint like legendary artist Frida Kahlo with Mexico City-based artist Sofia. Together, you'll paint a self-portrait or choose to honor someone in celebration of Dia de los Muertos. So go check it out at www.hello-trove.com and use code BIGGIRLMONEY to get $20 off your first box.
So let's introduce Rose to our listeners.
Okay,
Ronnie.
Our guest today is Rose Stanifer. Rose is a seasoned startup lawyer with a broad legal practice that includes over 15 years of experience forming new companies, structuring venture capital investments, and negotiating technology licenses. She routinely advises entrepreneurs and investors on formation, financing, and exit considerations. Rose lives with her husband and two daughters in beautiful Denver, Colorado.
So let's roll that interview. Thank you so much for being here, Rose.
I'm happy to be here. It's exciting.
Wonderful. So being in this tech space, for so long, is it something that you knew you loved from the beginning? What was it about it?
I would say I am accidentally in the tech space, less accidentally a lawyer. I come from a family of lawyers. Wasn't sure if that's what I wanted to do. Graduated from Stanford in the mid-90s. What you did back then was you went into tech. Since I was thinking about becoming a lawyer, I joined Cooley as a paralegal, and that has pretty much sealed my fate ever since.
Well,
Hey, so you were a paralegal there,
Yes.
and then that's what convinced or was what inspired you to go to law school.
My timing was perfect. I was a paralegal from 1999 to 2001.
Okay.
So if you were looking to escape an industry and go back to grad school, 2001 in San Francisco was the year.
Oh, I bet.
So never discount timing.
Yes. Well, and a lot of these things are all about timing, right? It's what happens and are you listening to it?
Exactly.
And a lot of us, we get so trained on a certain objective, you kind of get tunnel vision about it instead of being really open to new things that hit you. And Ronnie knows this better than anybody. In her short 3-4 years of her career, she's had these crazy twisty turns that have been, I guess I should ride the wave as opposed to fighting against it, right?
Right.
I mean, do you feel like you did that, Ronnie?
Yes, I think so. Well, I've started every big change fighting against it and then eventually rode the wave.
Well, I think that's human. It's how long, hopefully we get better at realizing, oh, I can fight this a little less in length and then roll with it, right? So I think that's what we get good at in our career.
Well, I think over time, the like worst case scenario that you come up with your head gets less and less dramatic.
Oh, ooh, that was so wise. So tell us how a little bit about this drop into tech and what you loved about it, or what's been the thing for you.
So I love working with startup companies at their inflection points. And so throughout my career, I've done not just forming baby companies and getting the initial capital, but I've also been fortunate enough to do quite a few IPOs as well as larger public deals and M&As. And you have different skill sets at all of those inflection points and different level of expertise.
Do you mean you, the lawyer, or do you mean the founder and the company leadership?
Everyone.
That's what I think too.
So, and it depends, right? Because sometimes I do work with serial entrepreneurs.
Sure.
And they are, on company number 5, 6, bringing a certain level of expertise from day one versus, the folks that dropped out of business school because their idea is just so fantastic. It can't wait. We have to go now. I've worked with venture capital analysts that are working on their first deal on the investor side to the gray-haired investors that have been around forever.
And they all probably have their own unique challenges.
They do.
Right? One thinks they know everything and the other one is sure they know everything.
Right. And so I like educating people at those various steps and bringing them together, right? So if I'm representing the company, helping them learn, what does the banker, what does the investor, why are they here? What do they get out of it? How can we best present the company to get this deal closed? Representing the investor who's fed up with the company and it's like, this guy's 24, he doesn't know what he's doing. Do we care about him, the tech? Can we transition him, right? Helping everyone not forget the business context in the legal deal.
It feels a little like you're herding cats and
yes,
you're dealing with a bunch of big children because you have to be the mediator. You have to be in there telling people the hard stuff that they may not want to hear.
A lot of times it's things that they don't want to hear. And a lot of times it's, we can't fix that risk. It's an inherent business risk. You don't hire us as the lawyers to wave a magic wand and say, voila, the risk has gone away. It's who's going to pay for it and how expensive is it? And let's sit down and talk about that.
So give us one example of a little risk, not little, but what does that risk look like? And what would be a good option that you would bring to the table for folks that do not understand the power that a great law partner might have in bringing their solution to market?
Sure. So I'll give it from both sides, since I do intentionally represent both companies and investors.
Sure.
And as a lawyer, there is no one right answer. Who I'm representing and the context is critical. So when working with a founder, an experienced lawyer, there's a suite of documents that go into most venture capital deals. And a lot of people don't realize that. They think there's one document and a check. It's a suite of documents. They all play together, and there's a lot of terms. What I like to say is one hand giveth, the other two taketh away. So if a VC is saying, I'm giving you this, and you're not reading the fine print in the other 4 documents, you don't realize that if you get fired as CEO, you are now no longer fired as CEO, you've lost your board seat, and perhaps you've lost a fair chunk of your equity in the company.
Because all those terms are laid out. So you need someone, at least you need to be aware of what are the terms if things go badly. Else you're just being irresponsible with your own future, right?
You are taking folks, trusting them at their word. And it's not necessarily that folks are trying to be nefarious. There's an assumption that you're going to do your diligence and that you understand the strings that come with venture capital.
Money. Yeah.
A lot of founders simply don't.
Got it.
On the investor side, it's the exact flip side. Let's say we have a rogue CEO. And this happens for a variety of reasons. Sometimes people go through rough patches and they just become rogue, and you need to separate them from the company. Sometimes you have actual business disagreements where you think the CEO is no longer good for the company. You need to make sure that when that CEO is fired by the board as CEO, that he's also been, I say he's also been kicked out of the boardroom.
Or she has.
Yeah, it's mostly, they're mostly he's.
He's like, I'm just being realistic.
They're kicked out of the boardroom, and if there's any stock that hasn't vested, that the company gets to claw that back to hire the next CEO.
Got it.
And so a lawyer will understand how all these provisions play together. And one classic example is folks think as long as they are connected to the company, their stock is going to vest. There's a little word thrown into a lot of these agreements for the executive suite, director. Does director service, if you're on the board, are you actually providing services to the company? Do you continue to vest? For a lot of executives, the answer is no. And if you don't have an experienced lawyer in your seat, you won't know the pros and cons. You won't even know to look for some of these words.
Sure. Well, I got to tell you, my biggest relationship with a lawyer was during a divorce, right? And this feels a lot of it, the parenting plan, all this stuff that you think you've thought all the way through, but because you are going through it the first time, you don't know the things that someone else has gone, hopefully a lawyer, has seen over and over and over to get you to think about. Right? It's almost like a lawyer is a mentor on steroids to me. It does feel like
a super smart mentor.
Yes, a super smart one that's experienced, right? And says, hey, think about this. Hey, think about this, right? And you get to choose. They're not telling you what you got to do, but
we've seen a lot of things that go right and a lot of things that go wrong. On the company side, hands down, I've seen more deals, more outcomes, more exits than my founder clients. That's just a matter of numbers.
Sure.
And on the investor side, usually that's true. There's some that have been around, for a very long time, and they have more under their belt than I do. But I just see more variety of deals than my clients. So it's not that I'm questioning their business judgment or what they see for this deal. I've just seen it play out so many more times.
Yeah. And it's like anything. If you doing something for the first time, reaching out and looking at your network is so important. I saw that with breast cancer, right? I knew one person who had breast cancer when I got it, and having somebody to talk through it who had been through it, just one person, made such a huge difference. So I see such an impact you can make. So, Ronnie, you had a good question you came up with.
So I guess I was curious for the entrepreneurs that you represent and the founders that are looking to secure some capital. What are some of the biggest mistakes that you see them make besides maybe not doing their due diligence when looking at these deals?
And these documents.
I loved this question because it was very easy to answer. They do not understand how venture capitalists and the investors and VC funds make money.
Oh,
How can they not know that going into a relationship with them?
well, Wendy, I don't know that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes,
I'm just teasing.
please tell. I'm sure I'm not aware of all of it.
Well, for example, I saw someone post a comment in LinkedIn just this week, not understanding an exit. Why would a founder step away, strive for an exit for their baby, for their company? And I laughed because I get that question, and I see that question cause a lot of problems in founders that seek venture capitalists' money. There's a line that says, your job is to sell the company for the VCs. That is how the VCs make money. Now, your exit, it's usually going to be you selling the company. You may stay with the acquirer, but you need to sell the company. Someone has to buy it for cash for the VCs to get their money.
If they buy it, you are no longer in control. You are not the one decider of the universe.
Right.
But what if you take your company public?
So if you take your company public, you now answer to the public. And so taking your company public don't take it lightly. It is a major shift for the company. There's a lot of reasons why companies have been staying private longer. It's hard to be a public company
Because of all the federal and state guidelines, because of all the shareholder requirements. Why?
Yes, but I'll simplify it in that you're under a microscope.
Oh.
You and your private investors no longer get to decide what the rules are. You are now subject to quarterly disclosures out to the market.
So that is a huge spotlight on everything that goes on.
Right.
I've worked on quarterly earnings supplements before, and it was a nightmare. It was so stressful.
But that's going public, doing an IPO is another form of exit, because at the end of the day, there's now a public market that your VCs can sell their stock. And so they sell their stock and they return the cash that they get for that stock to their limited partners, their investors. That's how a VC makes money. A VC does not make money by holding indefinitely. And the other thing is most venture capital funds last for 10 years.
Wow.
That's it. You can get extensions, usually a couple 1 or 2 year extensions at the ends of these funds. So there was a reason why for a very long time most companies went public or sold in the 6 to 8 year time frame.
Because that 10's looming at them.
That 10-year time period is looming. There's also a reason why a lot of companies had issues when they started staying public for over 10 years. The system wasn't set up for that. And a lot of founders don't understand the time horizon or the need to get cash out to the LPs, especially so their VCs can go raise another fund, right? I mean, they fundraise just like the founders do.
Well, the best thing we did when we started Magpie Healthcare, and I was one of the owners in that startup, was to decide from the very beginning whether we wanted to exit or whether we wanted to be a lifestyle company. And just having that from the beginning and what would exit look like and who would be the potential buyers and, what was our... since it's a services versus a product company, this whole idea of, 1 or 2 times revenue versus 6 times revenue and being really understanding what that would look like it is so big to do at the very beginning. It's like a marriage where you go into it and you go, all right, what are we trying to build together, right? What do you want out of your life in hopefully 50 years? And what does that look like? And let's make sure we're on the same page.
Absolutely. And I would say the second biggest mistake that founders do is they don't think about that from day one. I hate the term lifestyle company because
what is the better term?
I don't think there is a better. And right now in the market, we say it lifestyle company. It's not a lifestyle. People work just as hard, if not harder, because they're usually bootstrapped and they're funded off revenues and they don't have, the largesse of a VC writing a check. But the second biggest mistake is not understanding what you want out of your company and mapping that to your funding needs.
Wow.
Because this is true even if you don't want VC funding and you want to stay the quote unquote lifestyle business, bootstrapped, supported by revenues. Maybe you want loans to fund. But it's especially true if you're going to seek venture capital money. If you don't understand where you are in your business, when you need money, and how much money you need till the next milestone, you're screwed.
Well, and I see women over and over again asking for less money, the least amount of money they can get by with, versus I see the men asking for 5 times as much as they need. And I wish that's the one thing I wish we did a little differently, right? Because you just end up, going back over and over and over.
There's a fine line, because when you're early in the company, your valuation's going to be less. You're a riskier company. You have a lot more to prove. When you give out stock at a low valuation, that is really expensive stock. You're giving out a huge chunk of the ownership of your company for not very much money. That curve goes down, right? So the higher the valuation, the more someone is paying for less ownership.
Yes.
So you don't want to over raise at the beginning because you've just given away too much of your company.
Yeah. So bootstrap as long as you can, right? Until you're as beefy as you can get before you have to go the VC or the private equity or angel investment, whatever path that is.
Right. You should really be looking at the milestones of your company, and you don't want to raise just enough to get from milestone A to B. You want to get from A to B and then a little bit towards C, so that when you're back out in the market raising towards C, you're not like, oh my God, I'm not going to make payroll next month, or I haven't proven any of this tech deficit at this point. And most founders don't do that.
Can companies be legally bound by an exit strategy, or do they just have to have one and sell the VC that's what their plan is?
It really depends. So, but again, the VCs need you to have an exit. And so most of these documents are going to be structured as to what happens in an exit and who can force an exit.
So sometimes the VC can force an exit?
Absolutely. There is a phrase, if people are looking to start companies or getting stock options in a startup, look up drag along. So a drag along is a contract that most stockholders are required to sign in a financing deal. It's in the voting agreement, not to get too technical, but there's a drag along provision that says usually it's 3 buckets. Usually if it's the board of directors, if it's the founders, and a majority of the VCs agree that they want this deal to happen, everyone has to agree that deal will happen.
So you can drag along even if you don't want
even if you don't want to. And so there's a lot of negotiation as to whether or not the founders have a say and what threshold of founder should have a say. Because the inverse of someone getting to decide is someone getting to block that decision.
Wow.
And so this is where working with an experienced lawyer, and it doesn't have to be a lawyer, it could be a serial entrepreneur in your network
that's done this over and over.
It has done it a whole bunch of times, and understanding this positive, negative control, the permutations. And sometimes they build in provisions. The VCs don't have to agree unless it's a minimum of a 3x return, right? There's all sorts of terms that can get thrown in there. I would say most of my deals are middle of the fairway, plain vanilla, mostly because those are the type of clients, investors, and companies that I work with, and you're going to get a lot more mileage out of a plain vanilla deal than to, okay, if it's this situation, this is going to happen. If it's this situation, this is going to happen. You have to have a level of
simplicity
trust.
almost.
Well, and trust.
Oh, got it.
Yeah. There's a backstop,
Yeah.
but there has to be room for trust.
Yeah. So this feels like up till now, it's been such a great set of, it's almost the legal permeations and all the things you need to think about as a founder from the lawyer's perspective. That's the way it feels like it. And thank you for these insights.
Well, and there's tons of books.
Talking about this stuff because I always have, I don't know, I hardly know anything about it. So anytime we talk to anybody in the VC space, I have always questions that pop in my head because all these terms and stuff you're bringing up, I had no idea. If I was an entrepreneur, I wouldn't know.
That's right. That's right. But you've had quite, so if I look at you as, is it uncommon to be a woman in to giving legal advice to tech companies? Are you one of the few, or is it really pretty 50-50?
It's not 50-50. It's more than a handful.
Okay.
And I would say lawyers, just like bankers in adjacent to these tech companies, we are going to mirror the clients. So our ability to develop a book of business, to gain rapport, depends a lot on the clients. And so if you have an old school VC that's going to take the bankers and the lawyers that he works and he's going to golf out at Stanford Golf Course, which is a lot of them did, I may not be part of that club and develop that book of business.
Got it.
So it's not huge.
Got it.
I would say in the legal world, there's much less women in my space than in litigation.
Sure.
One example, because a lot of litigation, it's larger companies that are in litigation. They have outside counsel guidelines that mirror the diversity and inclusion policies of those large corporations.
Sure.
VCs and startups don't have diversity and inclusion policies that require diversity in their outside advisors.
Yes, that's true. I mean, they barely have it requiring on boards, and that's a whole nother topic. But it's funny because Ronnie and I know Jimena so well, her good friend that was a guest, and she just started her legal career. What's her area of expertise, Ronnie?
Well, she just got a job as a public defender.
Oh, yes, now, yes. But they tried to get her to do immigration at her first, and it was, that's not what she went to school for, right?
Okay.
And so did you always like the tech piece, or did you just fall into it because during those, early 2000s, it was so much tech on fire? Is that what happened?
I fell into it and realized that I really liked it.
Oh, what? How lucky.
And I fought it. I would say I fought it. I thought I went to law school and I had an amazing professor in environmental law and policy.
You wanted to do it.
And I was going to do that. And in fact, I left Cooley for close to 5 years and went to another firm where I did mostly environmental litigation policy, and alternative wind and solar development projects.
Cool.
And went back to Cooley at that time, went back to tech because I missed working with the startups, the investors, and I realized it suited my personality because I'm a closer. I wanted to do those deals, and VC deals, they happen quickly and they're fast, and especially where I was, it's one after another. It's not a 2-year project, a 10-year litigation. That was not my thing.
And you like that variety. You knew that about you.
I did.
Also, how fun to help startups secure VC funds. Like, that's exciting. You get to be like an accomplishment.
I mean, yeah, that's what at least a lot of founders I know, they want to exit and do something. It's kind of, you've succeeded if you do an exit,
You
right?
drink a lot of champagne.
Yes, I bet you do. Do you?
And not all exits. Actually, we mostly, especially in IPOs, because IPO closings happen at the crack of dawn. You have breakfast, celebratory breakfast.
Okay.
Because the closing calls are at 6 a.m.
Okay.
California time.
That's funny.
Oh my gosh.
That doesn't sound fun. I thought they'd be over dinner, a big ass, really fancy dinner.
Yes. Yes. We did have many closing dinners those obviously don't happen anymore because of COVID.
Oh, yes.
But even before COVID, they were getting scaled back as not fiscally responsible.
Sure.
Oh, well, that's no fun.
So you stayed over a decade at one place.
I did.
And I think a lot of our listeners, and I've struggled through my longer career than Ronnie's with how long to stay somewhere, right? I found I was kind of every 3 years because I like the variety too. I'd be in a new role, and I was lucky to be with bigger companies like AT&T and Lucent and Avaya where I could do different things. Tell us a little bit about what made you stay and go.
So I went back to that one firm 3 times. So I was there as a paralegal, a junior associate, and then as it's called a special counsel. So a senior attorney, but not a partner. And I went back I was there for those 3 times, and I went back for those 2 other times.
So going somewhere else and then came back to them.
And then I came back. It was really at the center, one of the handful of the firms at the center of the tech ecosystem in Silicon Valley. And so we had the privilege to work with some amazing companies that had great exits. And I got to work on not just forming those companies, but taking them public. And I really enjoyed that. And I liked a lot of the people that I worked with within the firm, as well as the ecosystem. So for doing the intersection of tech law with startups and VC financing, that was the place to get that experience.
Got it. So you decided, though, what was it, a year ago?
2018.
2018, you made the big, huge move from California to, what do we call us now, Silicon Flatirons or something? This up-and-coming area.
Silicon gets thrown out all over the place. Silicon Valley has even expanded beyond what was actually Silicon Valley, where chips were actually made and turned into Superfund sites. But I digress.
Yes.
Know the history of Silicon Valley if you're going to get VC funding, by the way.
Yes, exactly. So what made you make this move, and how's that been?
So the move has been fantastic. So I represented a few investors that were investing into the Front Range ecosystem, probably going back to 2012, 2013. So I had a sense of the activity that was going on here. My firm at the time had an office here. So again, I was aware of some of the bigger IPOs coming out of the Front Range, what was going on. And then this was a question I had to think long and hard about. But the truth was, especially for this audience, I hit a maternal wall that I did not expect. Didn't see it coming. I had 2 kids at my prior firm.
Okay.
And I had never heard of the concept of a maternal wall. Had I heard about glass ceiling? Sure, yes, of course. Had I heard about maternal wall? No. Never heard the term until I read books after I had my first kid.
What is a maternal wall for you? What kind of things did you hit, and how was it showing up?
You are treated as a different person.
Because you're a mama.
Because you're a mom.
Which sucks, people. Everybody out there can make a difference on this. Damn it. No, I'm sorry.
And I'll jump ahead in the questions because you asked what would I give advice to myself 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And I would say expect the maternal wall or the glass ceiling. Prepare for it, even if it's not fair and you don't think it's worth it. And I think that was my blind spot because I was good at what I did. I was respected. If there was a meritocracy, what the hell? It was all good. I didn't expect to have something like that impact me, right? I was the exception.
Because when you're doing good and you're being promoted and you're getting paid great raises, you think, oh, it's not going to happen to me.
Exactly.
Yeah, but I could say the same thing about sexual harassment, right? I can handle myself.
Absolutely.
It's not going to happen to me, right?
And the preparing for it, even though it like shouldn't happen thing, I feel like that's a big aha, especially for like women my age, because I do that myself. I'm like, I shouldn't have to prepare for that because that shouldn't even be happening. Like, it's not fair.
Right.
So you don't think that. So then preparing for it doesn't feel fair either.
It feels like a different generation. And because one of my friends laughed at me one day because I was like, are you kidding me? This is 2013. 2013, people.
And you thought, why is this still happening? Mm-hmm. I mean, what is this, Archie Bunker? What is going on?
Right.
So what, when you say you were treated as a different person, what do you mean by that?
I stopped seeing growth potential. I no longer saw the path forward. I was not getting put on the same quality of deals and client teams. I was repeatedly, sometimes jokingly, sometimes not, questioned about my ambition and my commitment. And sometimes in secondhand ways, client asking me if Rose was coming back from maternity leave. So you're trying to understand, is the client really asking that, or is the senior partner asking it? And it becomes death by 1,000 cuts.
Ugh.
And one of the books I read, I put a little book cheat sheet here. It was Getting to 50-50, and it was actually written by a former iBanker and VC. She was at Bessemer. And it helped clarify exactly what was happening to me. And that book came out in 2009.
Because you're reading it thinking, oh my Lord, I thought I was the only one.
If I had read that book when it came out in 2009 or 2010, I would have been so much more prepared. And a lot of angst just wouldn't have happened.
Wow. Well, it's unfortunate, though, because you want people to not have to worry about bad stuff until it happens.
Right.
Right?
Yes. But the silver lining of all of this is I'm pretty much where I should be. One of the things about being at the heart of what's going on in Silicon Valley is it is an echo chamber.
What do you mean by that?
No diversity of thought. So how far can we take something? And no counter opinion. Just because we can do this, should we do it?
Nobody asked that question.
No one asked the question. It's we can.
It's the big guy said this, so it's go along to get along.
Right.
Just it's shut up and rows, shut up and code, shut up and and follow.
Right. And folks are also looking at the startups as more of an assembly line, right? Sort of this is the market that we want to create.
Yeah.
Versus going back to the core, which is this is the company. What does this particular company need?
Yeah.
And so now I am at a fantastic firm in Denver. I can really work one-on-one with my clients. I have a lot more space during COVID-19 than I had in the Bay Area, which I won't discount that at all.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and
I'm glad that you were able to make a move. And I think that's a good thing for our listeners to hear.
Yeah.
That if they are hitting that or running into that there are other places that will value it.
Yeah. So
and have a plan.
Once if you hit it, have a plan.
Have a plan.
For how long are you gonna
I had a
deal
plan
with it?
I had a plan until my 2-year-old's first birthday. She turned 1 in April 2018. I had multiple job offers by mid-May, and I changed jobs by early June.
It's like putting this stake in the ground, right? Okay, I noticed this is happening. I'm going to talk through it, see if it's me or what's really going on, get the lay of the land, tell somebody that I want it to be different. And if it isn't different and I don't actually see a change by X months, I am going to make a change.
That's exactly what I did. And by the time I walked in to senior partners that I was working with, no one was surprised.
Wow. And nobody fought to keep you.
It all worked out. It all worked out for the best.
It usually does.
Yep.
Right? So speaking of culture, Ronnie.
Culture. As somebody who has been in this field for a while and just, working with startups and everything, and even companies that are about to go public, do you think that there's been an improved emphasis on diversity and inclusion and even company culture in general over the years?
Across the startups, you mean? Across all the tech startups? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if when Rose started her career, nobody cared and now people do, or maybe they still don't care. I'm just curious about her opinion on that.
I think they still don't really care, but they are talking about it more.
Whoa.
And
that is not what I was hoping you would say.
I know.
Sorry.
Rose is nothing if not direct. Let's put it, and I think that directness needs to be celebrated. So thank you.
Yes, I agree.
I would say there is a slow realization in some pockets that the lack of diversity is actually affecting the tech and the product.
Wow. Yeah, like Apple's watch didn't work on dark skin.
Right.
When it first came out. If you don't have diversity of your testers, then your product will have shortcomings.
Right. If you don't understand how the end user is using the product, then you're not going to create a very good product. You're going to have a smaller market than the original addressable market that you thought you had. And I think folks are paying attention to that. And there's still not a lot of buy-in, regardless of the data, for women on boards and diverse boards for their returns.
Yeah.
There's not buy-in for that when you go down the life cycle of the companies in the startups.
Yes.
Because they feel they need to be nimble and everyone needs to understand each other and get along. And if we're going to be bogged down in all these discussions, it's going to hurt the pace of development within the startups.
So it's an echo chamber.
It's the
again,
echo chamber.
Right? Like, no, just get in line. Get behind the strategy. But wait a minute. What if the strategy doesn't make sense anymore?
And you also have an issue of inertia. People recruit in their network. Startups aren't going to job fairs. Startups don't have HR.
Yep.
They're recruiting in their networks. Most of our networks look like us. I had one CEO that I worked with. He was maybe 20 employees in, and he was like, I have a problem, right? I am hiring from within my network. Total exception for him to basically lift his head up and say,
and even notice it was all white men like him.
Even notice and go directly to the tech recruiters that he was working with and say, no, this needs to change. And then when the women came into the company, to actively support them by putting them in front of the board.
Yes. Well, and most of the time that doesn't happen unless you do lift your head and you look, or you have great metrics, or you notice, oh my gosh, the last 5 people I've hired have all been women. Maybe I'll never forget. I interviewed 50 people for the book, the Cowgirl Up: A Woman's Guide to Navigating the Corporate Frontier, and I lifted my head. I'd done like 40 of them and realized I didn't have any men.
Right.
And I went, oh my gosh, I've turned into them, the person doing this.
I've done that. I have done that. I have mentored so many women. There's the Colorado bar has an attorney mentoring, and I specifically said, give me men, right? I will mentor men in this program because I had looked back at the past decade and it's almost predominantly women that I had mentored. We're all guilty of this. This is human nature.
Yes. So you and I'm lucky enough to have you as part of Coolest Women, right? In tech, this director level and above. But it was so much fun prepping for this interview just to see if you wanted to do it and what insights that you'd like to make sure we talk through.
Right.
And you talked about this thing. We're all about big girl money, about, being financially independent gives you lots of freedom. And getting to that point, a job can never own you. A boss can never own you, right?
Right.
So it's about getting, paid equitably, but it's also about what it allows you to do.
Right.
Right. And you had this great insight. You told me you hit this, as you were making more and more money, you hit this thing where you kind of put everything on. Did you call it autopilot?
I did.
Did I? Okay. I didn't know if I got it right. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about that? Because that was so insightful to me. And it was something I didn't even realize I had done until you mentioned it.
Absolutely. I put so many of aspects of my life, especially around finances, on autopilot. And that was a definition of success. I didn't have to look at the bills every month.
Because you could pay them. You had enough money to pay.
Right. I could go skiing. I could go on vacation and put it on a credit card. And I still didn't need to look at that and make sure that it was covered by my salary. I mean, that is absolutely successful. At the same time, money was just flying out the door.
Yeah, like a sieve.
Because I wasn't paying attention. And I didn't appreciate that it wasn't making the money then that was liberating. It's the financial independence.
Yes.
It's the financial independence, whereas in 2018, I can, leave incredibly high-paying job and make a drastic risk to move my practice that it turned out successful. It could have completely flopped. I'm my family's breadwinner. Like, what does that mean? But because I had taken my life off autopilot and, my husband's like, make sure you give me credit. Yes, this is a team effort on financial discipline.
He prepped you for this episode. That is so funny.
But I credit him with helping me take things off autopilot, to realize that it wasn't just being able to pay for 2 days vacation, but it was being able to pay for tomorrow's freedom and decisions. If I want to take that risk, I can. I am not beholden to this job for the paycheck.
Yeah.
And I mean, that is a huge luxury.
Yes.
To have that independence, and you can't get there.
Yeah.
On autopilot.
Well, the time
I love paying for tomorrow's freedom.
Yeah, I love that. Now, when I first did this was when I left this great paying job a year after I started in it, because I only wanted to work with a company that was going to be successful. And to walk away from that great paying job, you have these, they call them golden handcuffs, and the salary keeps you there.
Oh, yeah.
The one thing I did that really helped me was to look at, I call it my monthly nut. Like, what are all of my expenses?
Right.
In that, if I had to cover them next month in a different job, what's that magic number?
Right.
And that helped so much, because, to be honest, I thought I was kind of high maintenance, to be honest. I thought, I was the nails, hair. I really wasn't, but I had this idea of me as, I could spend some money.
Right.
And I looked and said, oh my goodness, this gives me freedom to see that this number, this monthly nut, is actually smaller. It doesn't make me have to take a job just because of the salary.
Right.
So I don't know. I mean, Ronnie, what does this make? How does this land on you, early in your career? How does it look for you?
Well, I've just been thinking about this a lot, because my salary's been so all over the board throughout my career in just a very dramatic way.
Yes.
I've doubled it and cut it in half and doubled it again. and which has been awesome. But I feel like it's kind of the same thing. Like you almost feel like if you're making good money that you don't want to be the type of person that is, so frugal that you're not enjoying it, what you worked hard for. But I totally agree with what you said, Wendy. Like I just did my budget for the first time and like put in, money I spend on like getting my nails done or like going to happy hour, waxes, this, that, and the other thing. And the thing I found helpful was to do all of it as like a percentage of my total income.
Whoa.
Because then I'm like, if I go to get my eyebrows waxed and it costs me like $50, I'm like, oh, I shouldn't be spending that. But if I look at it as a percentage, then it's like, okay, do I really want this percent of what I'm making each month to be going to that thing?
Wow. That's good.
But that was a big thing. And just thinking about like what Rose said, thinking about you're paying for that freedom and the ability to make the decisions that are best for you and take your time with them. That mindset, I think, is so valuable for anybody at any stage of their career.
And I think it's especially important for women in tech because unless you want to stay at a large public technology company, at some point in your career, you'll find yourself in a startup where they will ask you to forego the larger cash salary, take a smaller one in lieu of equity.
Yes.
And my take here on equity, stock options are worth zero until there's an exit. I never value them. And if that is a huge growth potential because you can step into senior roles in these startups that you may not get to in your established company. And if you can't do that because of the financial insecurity of that lower salary, that's really hurting your potential, especially within tech. Now, there's a whole sorts of equity issues around that. People go too low on their salaries, and now we're only getting people that have trust funds in there.
Yes.
But if you can be responsible with a few years of your salary so that you can take those leaps.
Those risks.
Because that actually would increase your earning power in the long run.
Well, what I'm seeing is a lot of women have partners that one of you has a stable job and one of you takes the riskier ones. That
is me. So I have the stable job.
Yes.
So I took this leap in 2018, but of my marriage, I have the stable job. My husband has worked in startups.
Got it.
And I'm the lawyer sending the letters out to everyone that you're now going down to minimum wage. I have been on the recipient end of that because of his startups.
Wow.
So, it goes through variety because a lot of them, most of them fail.
Yes. It's definitely riskier, right? But I love this advice that you'll never get that potential to make the big payout unless you get your financial ducks in a row earlier in your career.
Absolutely.
I love that. Wow. That's really powerful. Thank you. And
you asked, as a woman in tech, what are some of the challenges you face and how do you handle them? The challenges in tech?
Yeah.
Because most people don't actually talk about them. It's more you're going to assimilate and be one of the boys.
Yes.
And I think my answer is threading the needle of both. So for most of my career, I have been the youngest and the only woman in the boardroom or in large drafting sessions for IPOs.
Yeah.
And it's simple advice that I did get from a senior woman lawyer. When you go back in person, it's always dress one notch above.
Ooh.
You're always going to be slightly more professional than everyone else in the room. Especially in boardrooms and large drafting sessions, I always wear bright colors in a sea of men in black suits.
Why?
You're the woman in red.
I think I know, but why?
You get a certain level of respect, and everyone knows who you are. They know your name because they know why you're there. And when you talk, they listen to you because they can't ignore you when you're there in a red blazer.
Right. And you have to have a certain level of confidence. I was told, I bet you not maybe 20 years into my career, I think you should consider a more muted color in your suit. And I couldn't believe it was a man, white man, that said it to older. And it was like, why do you think that's true? You know, I called him on it.
Yes.
And it's just too loud. And I said, it's too loud or I'm too loud? So I love that advice. So lean into it, right?
Accentuate the fact that you are the only woman, or you're one of a handful of women. And especially as
Own that.
And as I was getting more senior and there would be younger women, it was, okay, Rose is who we're talking to, right? The person that's leading this session, the person that's giving us advice as outside counsel is Rose. That's the authority figure in the legal role. And it goes into the confidence. And then the others are, don't dismiss the chit chat. There is a lot of chit chat that happens in a boardroom at the opening of negotiation, and finding that common ground
will serve you.
It will serve you. I read a book about some of the early women in venture capital, and one, she always read the sports page before she went in to board meetings. For me, it was car shows and the latest tech gadgets.
Got it.
So when my husband would want to watch, Top Gear or something at home, yes, great, because then I could go into a board meeting and someone is talking about their new Quadriporte, and I'm like, I know exactly what that car is, and I can talk about it. And
did you see it on the last blah, blah, blah show, road
right?
show? Yeah.
You're part of the conversation as opposed to just sitting there going, why are we talking about this?
I think a lot of this has to do, you've seen it where one of the skills in negotiating is to mirror people, right? People don't even realize you're doing it. It's not manipulative. It's just a way to connect.
Right.
Especially when you're different, you have to do some of these skills. So if we're sitting here and your arms are crossed, then I cross my arms, right? If you're sitting here and you're leaning forward, I lean forward. If you're, you put your hand on your chin, and it's amazing how much it works. And I think this is just a different way to build that connection, right? So it feels like you've got some common ground, right? Because people do business with people, right? Not companies,
right?
And what have you done then in those cases where you weren't able to connect, and people rushed, just really didn't want to see you, didn't want you to be there?
That happened a lot, and silence is actually best, not trying to interrupt them. But as the lawyer, I would have an ace in my hole, because I would let them chat. And then if they truly were about to do something that was like absolutely red flag, I would chime in. And now my voice would matter because they were ignoring me. I wasn't interrupting them in sort of the minutia. But when I spoke, it was with intention, confidence, and context. It was like, okay, now we have an issue.
Got it.
And it was like, okay, if we're not gonna chit chat, if you're not gonna meet me on a human level, you're gonna meet me as
on a professional level.
You're gonna meet me as I'm in this boardroom,
and I'm valuable.
I represent you as the directors. What you just talked about opens up you, director, to personal liability.
Got it. And then they have to listen.
Then they listen.
Yeah, exactly, because it's valuable, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's like anything. I mean, have you ever... I played tennis against people, and they totally discounted you until you got on the court and you started hanging with them.
Right.
And then it was, right?
Right.
I mean, I'll never forget going in and doing biz dev at a conference, and I had to try to get in and get a meeting with a company. So I go to their booth, and the guy wouldn't even look up from his phone.
Right.
When I walked up, as I was talking to him, and so I asked a technical question.
Right.
Why in your solution are you using H323 as your, your interface protocol? Why wouldn't you use SIP? Everybody's moving to SIP. I'm really interested. He physically put down the phone, looked me in the eye, and said, "Whoa, yeah," and saw me for the first time.
Right.
Right. It's weird. It doesn't make it okay. I remember walking away going, this isn't fair that I have to do that. I have to play these games, but at the same time, you can be right or you can be effective. And in that case, being right would have been calling him on his dumbness,
and that would not have been effective.
It's not effective, right?
And the other trick that I played rugby for 6 years, and when I walk into a testosterone filled boardroom, and you can absolutely tell which of those boardrooms they are.
Yeah.
And people are swearing and being inappropriate, and they see you and they're like, oh no, now we have to comport.
Yes.
And I find someone in that room and we chit chat. It's like, oh, well, when I was on the Stanford rugby team, mood changes.
Yes.
All of a sudden they're like, oh,
yeah,
she can hang with the boys.
Right.
We're cool.
Yes.
And you've reset everyone. Should I have to say that? No. Does it work?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I've dropped those kinds of things in simple ways. Like, when I got my master's in computer science, I was only one of 4 women. And so you just get used to kind of being the only woman in the room. So this doesn't bother me at all when we're sitting here. Or you drop these things so that people know you have education, that they know you've got 20 years. I've seen so many women that look young for so long, and it's actually maddening. Because they think you have 5 years of experience and you've got 15.
My greatest turning 40 was so great for my professional career, because literally days after I turned 40, you can go in and be like, well, in my 40s now.
Yes.
Like 3 days into being 40, but it's instantaneous credibility.
I love it. I love it, dropping that.
Yeah.
Well, this has been so much fun. I love it. I want to thank you for spending the time with us. And any parting thoughts or...
Just be prepared, even if it's not fair, especially in the tech community.
Get prepared, even if it won't be fair, if it happens to you.
Yeah, and understand everyone's motivation around the table.
Yeah, exactly. I love it. Well, thank you.
Hello, precious listeners. We wanted to remind everyone about our Patreon page. We have some amazing perks for our patrons, including, but not limited,
bonus episode,
resume workshopping,
stickers,
live Ask Us Anything sessions,
and maybe most importantly, you get access to our private Big Girl Money Slack channel, where you can chat with us and some of our amazing guests we've had on the show.
In fact, the other day, one of our patrons Slacked us because she was about to quit her job and she was freaking out about how to tell her boss. And I've been there. So we walked her through it and it turned out great. We are the instant career crisis hotline that you don't know you need until you do.
So go to biggirlmoney.com/donate to learn more.